Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I am David Allen Notco, and today we are going to be awash in a sea of variables. I will be your Scotterator today, so I'll be working behind the scenes, answering any chats or questions that you have. Feel free to drop them in there. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the legend, the bro himself, Scott McQueenie.
Thanks, Notco. You're too kind. Hi, everybody. Good to see you, or at least good to virtually see you. Well, you can see me anyways. So we're talking about variables today. The way this variable topic came up is something that we've been doing a lot in the software training consultant team here in Automate. Somebody will send in something that's like a question. We get questions internally. We'll get questions from people like on the consulting team. Bro will ping me and say, hey man, just want to make sure this functionality works this way. Is this your understanding? Somebody will submit some feedback, and that feedback will be on one of our documents. We'll get questions in one of our certification sessions. However it happens, we get into sort of a deep dive on one of these functions that are a little more advanced, something that honestly a lot of us haven't worked with very much. And then that kind of leads to, okay, we talked about it, we went away to our respective cubicles, and we come back, all right, guys, I did some testing, here's the way it works. So we'd already talked about it, none of us was exactly sure. We do some testing. So we have the answer for the person that asked the question. And a lot of times that results in this. We're like, that was cool. Here is a way to use a function that I really didn't understand before. And if it's new to me and I've been training on the product for years, let me share that kind of stuff with our partners. This is hopefully going to lead to you being able to use that functionality and incorporate it in some of your scripts and stuff like that. So let me see if this is going to work properly for me. Okay, this is our agenda. So we're going to start off talking about script variables, just a conversation about script variables, what you can expect in there, and the different things that are comprised all of the script variables in our script engine. Now we're going to talk about storing them. When we talk about storing variables, that's going to lead to a conversation of two different parts. The first one is script states. And I'll be honest, script states is the one that prompted this entire conversation. We had a question about script states. We looked at the documentation. We kind of put our heads together. We're like, I don't know. That doesn't really seem that intuitive to me. Let's dig into it, see if we can make it work. So script states is what prompted this entire webinar. And we worked on that and kind of tested it and found out how to use it. And that's what we're going to share with you today. But it's not the only way to store a variable. You can also store a variable in extra data fields. A lot of you who've been watching our content, who've been around Automate for a while, you hear us refer to them as EDFs, extra data fields. I, up until yesterday, would have stored any script variables that I wanted to preserve in an EDF. So that's something that we've all used for a long time because we understand the functionality and it's useful in a lot of ways. So that's another way you can store your script variables. And then we're going to get into troubleshooting. And as I sort of learned how the script state functionality worked, I realized that there's some functionality built into it that really lends itself to troubleshooting. We won't discuss how long it took me to figure out how to make the script state function work so that you could use it for troubleshooting. That's not the important part. The important part is that I did figure it out, and I'm going to show you guys now so you don't have to spend that much time learning that. It's all right here. It's fantastic. That's what we're here for. Script variables. We're starting with that, okay? Script variables contain information that is linked to the target computer on which the script is running. And that's something I want you to keep in mind. A script is running on a computer, and we're talking about a computer script. By default, if you go to make a script, it's a computer script. Most of our scripts are computer scripts. We won't talk about non-computer scripts in this conversation, so just think of it that way. This script runs on this computer. Well, when a script is running on a given computer, there are things that are going to be linked to that computer. One example of a variable here is %computer_name%. If I put that in my script somewhere, it's going to pull the name of that computer and insert it into wherever I had used this variable in my script. An example that you'll see later on in the presentation here is maybe I'm going to be having a ticket that says, this thing failed on %computer_name%. So it's going to pull in that name and it's going to insert it right into that place in my ticket. That is one sort of thing that a script variable can be. Something like that related to the computer itself. Another commonly used example is computer ID, and you're going to see that in here. So a set of variables, and there's tons of them, related to that computer that I can pull from the database, insert that variable somewhere, and put it right into whatever function contains that variable. Another example would be when I run a script function. Anytime I run a shell function, which is, think of that like, command prompt. Command shell, I'm in the command prompt. What would I run if I was sitting right in front of the keyboard from a command prompt? That is a shell command. Anytime I run a shell command in the script, it populates a variable called %shell result %. So that's another type of variable. A variable that contains the results of one of the script functions that has run during my script. Yet another type of variable is going to be one that is defined by the user. And that means me. That means whoever's writing the script. I could run a SQL query. I do have a script function called variable set SQL query. And I could choose to name that SQL result. So that would be the way I can compose my script function. Variable set SQL query. Here's my SQL query I want to run. And I want you to store that in a variable I'm going to call SQL result. When they are user-defined variables like this one, they're referenced by being surrounded by those @ signs, where the first two, something that is tied to that agent from the database like its computer name, something that happened when I ran a script function earlier like a shell result. Those are surrounded by the % signs. Any user variables like the ones I'm creating during the course of the script, those are surrounded by the @ signs. I mean, that's cool and all, and hopefully you have a slightly better understanding about script variables now. The thing is, they don't live forever. I know. It's kind of sad. Why don't they? Why can't they? No, I mean, I guess it's a database product, and we have a whole bunch of stuff built into the product to clean up the database and get rid of all data, or else the product would be unusably slow. So I guess that's why they can't live forever. I know. So sometimes you're trying to troubleshoot a script. I ran a script. It didn't do what I expected to do. Okay. When I go look at the script and it says, at this point, perform this action. At this point, run this query, save it to variable. Since I ran a shell command earlier, my %shell result % should be populated. So I should know what those variables are when the script is running. Okay, that's cool. But the dude just told me that the variables don't live forever. So where do they go? Aha. Yeah, they're gone, like poof, into the ether. So you have to remember that a script is running one computer, one script. So that's what's happening when I run a script. It can happen because I right-clicked on a computer and said run a script, or I have the computer management screen open, either in the thick or the thin client, the web client or the desktop client, and I run a script. It could be an autofix script. When the script is running on one computer, it establishes a session. So if the first line of my script was %shell result %, and I don't run any other shell commands in that script, then %shell result % will be populated for the entire time that script is running in that session. The session represents one script and one computer. That's populated the whole time. Any of the other variables, if I define a user-defined variable that is populated and can be referenced with those @ signs, it lives for the entire session of the script. But as soon as that session is over, meaning the script gets to the end, if it successfully runs to the last line and executes the last line, if you've got logic into it that says, check for this, and if this thing isn't there, exit the script, and it hits that exit, whenever the script finishes, that session is over, and those previously living, breathing variables are no longer. So how do we access those variables stored in there if they're no longer available after the script is completed? I'm glad you asked. That's what we're doing. Wait a minute. I think I heard a nutco. Caw-caw!
Yeah, let's just run them indefinitely. I have tons of resources. It's fine. That's all fine. Just run the scripts forever. They'll never die.
I like his solution, right? You know, if the variables are dying when the script finishes, Notco solution is we'll just run the script forever and ever. If you wanted to do that, that's within your purview. I don't know if I can access the living scripts variables inside that script while it's currently running if I wanted to access them somewhere else. Notco, why don't you test that and get back to the class? Thank you for your input. So when we're storing the variables, like I said, we're going to start with script states because those are sort of the initial function built into the product that's designed for you to store these variables. This is a two-part gimmick here. The first being script state set. And that's what it looks like. Fascinating, right? So script state set, and you can see we have handy little crib notes under each function box there. So the top one is computer ID. Notice how it tells you to use @computer ID on computer scripts. So that's what I put in there. I also did a little bit of digging into our documentation, and some of the images in our documentation had %computer ID %. That works as well, but since the function here says to use @, I'm using @. The big difference there is if a script is staying local. If a script is just running on one computer, you can use %computer ID % in all of our scripts to represent the one local agent upon which the script initiated and is currently running. If you, for some reason, have logic built into your script that causes it to jump to a different computer, maybe your script is saying, find another computer in this location that is online and a master. Oh, I found it. It's agent number 342. Then you would change your script to say, I want you to run on agent 342. You're now telling it to sort of run on that one. So in that scenario, when your script started on one agent and it's now running on a different one, that's when you have to use @computer ID @. So that's the terminology we use in the documentation as it's running on a remote computer. Remote because it's not the computer upon which the script initiated. This function says run on @computer ID @, so I did. Now the name. The name is, what do I want to name this script state saved variable? I'm giving it a name now so that in the future I can retrieve that script state, and it's going to contain whatever variable I put in it when I'm setting it right now. So in this case, I'm setting it with @current IP @. And what I was doing with this here is, I'm going to try to show you when I get to the script, but I was capturing the agent's local IP address. As a matter of fact, in this screenshot, you've got a bunch of available variables that you can drag into this function. You can see one on the second to the right column. The bottom of the list is %local address %. That is the computer's local IP address. So what I did previously is I did a variable set with a constant. I put %local address % in there, and I said set that into a variable I named current IP. So I built logic in there to say, I want you to grab the current IP address. How do I grab it? Variable set, grab %local address %, put it into current IP. So now in this screenshot you see here, I've already populated a variable called @current IP @. I did it by copying it over from the local address. So now I'm copying it again, and I'm saving it in the script state. I'm naming my script state saved IP address. After this has been done, I can retrieve this piece of information from a script state. The key about script states, and I won't worry about taking up your time to tell you how long I did this wrong until I got it working right, is that it is tied to the script and the agent. A lot of times I will, when I'm trying to troubleshoot a script or when I'm trying to get it to work properly, I'll have my one script over here and my other script on the other monitor. And I'm going like, trying to test the functionality, I'm trying to look, how come this isn't working? Can't get it to pull over the script state. Ah. Oh, wait a minute. Same script. Yeah, I was trying to write to the state with this script and trying to retrieve it from the other script. It doesn't work that way. So I've saved you the trouble of doing it wrong. So now you know, when you do it within the same script, it absolutely works. So at some point in the future, if I run this script again on this agent, I'm going to be able to retrieve a script state that I have called saved IP address. And the contents therein, which were at the time in that at current IP at, are going to be brought back to my script to be used. Like this, script state get. So I'm just saying, for this computer ID, retrieve the script state that I had named saved IP address, and now I'm writing it out to a variable. I'm calling it last run IP, because the last time I ran the script, that's what the current IP was. So that's my two-part functionality to use script states. We're going to talk more about script states when we get into troubleshooting at the end of the gimmick here, but set it with something that's in my script and give it a name. Then that name is the script state name I'll be able to use to retrieve it when I run this script on this computer again in the future. And that's the key part. Same script, same agent. Don't do what I did. What I used to do before I learned about this cool script state functionality was I would just save the information I needed to an extra data field. I'm sure you guys are familiar with EDFs. This one is, my example here is pertaining to an individual computer. So I would create a computer EDF and I would call it last run IP address. So I would just take my current IP address, I would use extra data set value, and I would write it to that computer. The screenshot here doesn't show local address and a computer EDF because I didn't actually create that since I was trying to learn and demonstrate the script state functionality. But what I've done is I've pulled it from another example that I did create for another test script. The important thing about working with extra data get and extra data set is you have to look at the type of EDF it is. Notice right below the dropdown for extra field, it tells you whatever the number that the name of the EDF ends in, whatever number that is, it tells you on which type of object this resides. So for example, server address -2, when I look at my legend right below the field, 2 means it's a location EDF. That means when I'm going to the ID in the field right below that, I need to make sure the ID matches the type of object. I can't put in computer ID in this field because the EDF I'm pulling in is a location EDF. So I just got to make sure whenever I'm using that replacement variable in the ID field, I have it to match the appropriate object. Since this is a location-based EDF, I'm using %location ID %. Same thing applies, just goes to the database and finds, oh, I'm a member of location ID 17. Okay, so when I go to retrieve the server address field from the EDF, try to go, well, as a matter of fact, this one is setting it, so I'm writing to it because I'm using extra data set. I'm going to write to it for whatever location ID this agent is a member of. What am I writing in there? Well, here I've pulling in a server address that I've referenced earlier in my script. I populated a variable. I'm going to write to that variable. And now if you see here, the little value entry it has below there, if including specifying a variable, include the @ sign. So I guess in my screenshot I should have put @ server address to @, but that's what I'm doing. And the intent there was the same thing. Earlier in my script, I used logic to determine the appropriate server address. This script is actually pulling in a server address, trying to ping it. If I can't ping it, it pulls in the secondary server address and it tries to ping it. If I was able to ping the second one, it's trying to take this second one and write it back to the EDF. The same logic applies here. I want to know what that value was after the script is finished running. So if it's gone to this EDF, I could then go open up that location and look at that value. I could also pull it in using extra data get in another script function. The last time this script ran, we used extra data set and we stored a variable to the server address. Okay, so now I want to pull it back in. We're using extra data get. The same logic applies. I'm telling it what EDF I want to look at. It's a location EDF as indicated by the 2 at the end. So I'm using location ID. And when it's extra data get, now I'm getting it from the EDF and I'm going to output it to whatever variable I choose here. I'm giving it a name. So I'm saying put it in server address 1. So these are the 2 ways I can store variables and retrieve them. Script state and extra data fields. So the next part of this is where we're getting into troubleshooting. And I'll show you some things built into this functionality that are really going to be useful for you, because part of our thinking here was I'm writing the script and I'm trying to retrieve the information, but perhaps during the course of this, I had made like 8 variables. And maybe I wrote the script like I started it, 10 months ago, and I would go back to it, test it and tweak it. And then, things get in the way. You get busy. Oh man, I forgot I started that script. Let me go back to it. And if I'm using 8 variables, if I'm not in the same frame of mind as I was on the time that I created those 8 variables, I'm not going to be really sure which is the right one I'm looking for. So my thinking was being able to use some troubleshooting around the state variables that had been loaded is going to give me an opportunity to see what's in there and perhaps identify the one I'm looking for and go from there. So I kind of did a little bit of poking around and testing to find out, is there a way for me to get it to show me the variables? It doesn't show them to you within the UI. It doesn't have a situation where I'm trying to grab my script state variable and it has a list of them and it shows me the contents. Our UI isn't set up to deliver it to you in that way. So what I decided was, let me find a way to try to see all the variables that are in there and see if there's a way I can work with it that will at least give me the answer. So here is my script. It's got a bunch of lines in there. This is the script that I made really just for testing this functionality, for testing my script state and for testing the ability to write to it and retrieve from it. Notice those 2 lines at the bottom, highlighted in yellow. It says get, and that is a script state get, at, so you can see that as blank. And then it says all state variables for this computer. So this is the one that is most helpful for you trying to do any troubleshooting about what your script is or is not pulling in, depending on what you expect. So here we are, script state get. This is going to pull in all of your script states that are available for you. That's going to allow me to kind of run through them and see the results. I'm going to skip past that pro tip for just a second so I can show you this next step, which is script run. This is something we recommend for all of your troubleshooting. Anytime you're trying to troubleshoot a script, and anytime you exit a script, you should put this in right before you exit any script and right at the end of any script. It is just, I'm using the script run functionality and I'm running our built-in function script. You can see the path to it, _ system automation functions, and it's called show variables. And that's exactly what it does. This is incredibly useful when you're trying to troubleshoot what was going on. I was trying to pull in this variable. The script didn't do what I expected. What was the variable at that time? I don't know. The script already run. The guy told me the variables don't live that long anymore. Yeah, I know. But wouldn't it be cool if I could capture what all the variables were at the time the script run and write them to the log? Huh. You can. Script run, and the script you're running is that one, system automation, functions, show variables. that is going to write all the variables that were present at that time to the script log. Best way to view it is from here on the computer management screen. This is a screenshot of the computer management screen from the desktop client. Over there on the right, you can see view log. When I click on view log, there you go. I've got a bunch of variables in here. You can see my little scroll bar has a lot of stuff in there, but the ones I'm looking for are all at the bottom of that top section. Notice how the top section shows script variables, use at instead of, well, yeah, use the at symbol instead of the percent sign, all right? So down here, the bottom three in my list, last run IP, current IP, saved IP address. That's where I pulled it in from my script state. So I told my script, use script state and save these to that computer. Now I'm telling it to retrieve them back and then write them to this log. So in my example, if I had 8 variables and I couldn't remember which one was the right one, I might take those final 2 steps in my script here to retrieve them all and run the function script to show all variables. Then I go to the computer management screen. I view the log for that entry, which was showing the variables. Now I'm looking at the script log and it's got the variables in there. Oh, cool. I couldn't remember what I called it. Turns out it was saved IP address. That's the one I'm looking for. So I know how to proceed. I want to see if I can try to transition over real quick to show you my script. I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but we're going to find out together, aren't we? Here we go. You got this. Don't worry about it. All right. I'm going to see if I can locate this script for us. I want to work with the script that I had made just for this example. There's something I wanted to point out to you real quick to make sure you understood. I recommend that if you're ever using script states, that this is one of the last lines that every script you run performs. This is script state set. And notice how if you leave it empty, you're going to get all variables. If this is empty, then you leave the value empty as well. So what that does is we're setting all state variables. So my script has done all of its logic in lines 1 through 11. Now in line 12, I'm saying set all my variables into a script state. Since I'm using this set all by not putting anything in the name, that means when I go to run this script in the future and I'm trying to do the troubleshooting that I was demonstrating, that means this get all, same thing. It's a get with nothing in the name, which translates to get all. Since I've done set all as my last step on a script, when I come back and I try to do my troubleshooting, then they're all going to be loaded for me in the get all. So get them all, run my script, then I go look back in my log and I can see what I'm looking for. Then I'm going to be able to go back into my script and plug in the appropriate script state to get it to do what I want. So this is a little bit cumbersome. You can't really see the script states inside the UI, but if you've told it to save all state variables, then you do a get all, then you run the function script to show variables. Now they're in the log like you see here. That's the one I was looking for. Cool. If that's the way I did it, I may choose to go out and disable those 2 functions at the end. If I found the one I need, I don't need it to get all and run show all variables. Maybe I'll leave show all variables in there, but that is how I can troubleshoot. In my example, I was only making 1 state because I was trying to test 1 state. But if I made 8 states like I was talking about earlier, troubleshooting them this way is going to be a super easy way. Well, it's going to be a useful, manageable way to find the information I'm looking for, what's in those variables. All right, here's a few key takeaways for you folks. Variables are precious. Only you can save them. Script states and EDFs for the win. They are so cool and useful. What I like about script states are those two things that I just showed you. Save all of my script states, save all my variables to a state right now, and then bring them all back in so I can troubleshoot them. There is no such thing for EDFs. EDFs are one and done. You saw how I was doing it with an EDF. I first must create the EDF. If the EDF doesn't exist in Automate, it won't show up in that dropdown. So I got to create it. Then I got to write to it. Then when I try to retrieve it, I got to go find that right one and bring it into my script. And that's a one-off. That's only just for that one EDF. The difference for those script states is let me dump them all and retrieve them all, and then I can go through them and see what happened. And seeing what happened is what I'm doing in my research. I'm going in there. I saved all of them. I brought them in. I go look at that script log. There's the one I was looking for. Cool. Then I know I can go into the script, modify it, and pull in the one I want. Folks, our documentation on this area is pretty thorough. Let me tell you, because I spent a lot of time on the script state set and the script state get pages on our documentation while trying to do this. The most important thing to remember here on this path is if you go into our documentation, you search function references. That is a list of all of our script functions. So in function references, there are categories, both the script state functions, which are script state set and script state get, and the EDF functions, extra data get value, extra data set value. They are all within the category of our script functions called database functions. So here on the database functions page, you can see here is my extra data get, extra data set, script state, clear, set, and get. That's where these all live in our documentation. Those are your friends, because as I was sitting here testing it, getting results that I wanted or not getting results that I wanted, I was in the documentation. We have actual step-by-step examples in there, and those absolutely helped me have the light go off and say, oh, cool, I get it. Now I know how to do it, and I started having results. It's fantastic. I will tell you, don't be me. Make sure every time you're testing this that you're doing it in the same script. I just did a script stage set. I'm going to do a get from this same script. It'll work. With that being said, please, folks, what questions do you have for us today? We would love to know. Oh, I think I hear Natko.
We have a question here. Aaron is asking, is there any variables that would be missing from the script debug tool that would show using this method instead?
Well, I spent a lot of time in the script debugger while I was trying to do this. So we're going to back up a little bit here. All right. All right, what you see here on my script log is last run IP. And that's what I did. And that was the first script state I saved. So I'm using a script state get, and I'm pulling in the state of the saved IP address, and I'm storing it in last run IP. As I was going through this process, once I finally got it working, meaning once I realized that I was being a fool and trying to set it, the state on one script and get it from another, which, by the way, I don't know if you knew this, you can't do that. But once I started doing it on the same script, I would run this in the debugger, and last run IP would show up for me. That was the first one I was testing with. I'm trying to save the thing to last run IP. How come it's not working? Oh, once we figured out I need to be on the same script, it showed up right in the debugger. So would this reveal any scripts, any variables that don't show in the debugger? The debugger is only going to show a variable if that step populates that variable. That's what the debugger does. It runs through each step, and in this case, it retrieved a state, a script state, and it put it into last run IP. So it did show up for me in the debugger as soon as that step executed. That was my eureka moment. I'm like, oh, I was just doing it wrong. Thank God it works. This is awesome. In my example, where if I'm having 8 different script states in there, and I'm trying to figure out which one is the right one, and that's one I want to dump them all, and I want to go look in the log. Well, if those other 7, I just showed last run IP worked for me. If the other 7 don't get generated by a specific script function, they're not going to show in the script debugger. The debugger is only going to show if there is some line that populates that variable. So this, in the log, I didn't ever have saved IP address, or I didn't have at current IP or at saved IP address being populated, although I think I did for at current IP, but definitely not at saved IP address. But they show up in the log. So yes, doing it this way, setting all of them, so set all state variables with a blank, and then getting all of them, and then writing them to this log by calling that function script is going to dump them all right here like you can see. So this is where you're going to see all of them. It is possible that if you don't have a function that is resulting in that variable, you won't see it in the script debugger. What else we got, Narco?
That is it for the questions for today's content. There was one quick question about the Automate Professional, when the next class will be run. I just want to make a quick comment on that, on the Automate Certified Professional, Automate Certified Expert, that those are run on demand now with the option of the live Q&A session with either myself, Scotty, or our other bro, DVB, that if you sign up for the live Q&A session, then you can get to talk with us directly after going through the on-demand sessions and work with us on the certifications. But other than that, there is no other questions.
To follow up on what Nako was talking about there, if you sign up for our certification and you choose the option that gives you access to a live trainer, one of us, for the Q&A session, I highly recommend it. We are the ones who created the content that go in that certification, and we did it through trial and error, and it evolved and improved through many iterations as the product changed and the way we deliver our certifications has changed. So we know what we're talking about. We know what we meant. Well, if you're consuming this and you're watching the certification in a video, of course, there's a very legitimate chance that you're not going to quite understand what we were trying to say when we talked about that particular part of the product that was on that slide. And maybe it was a part of the product that we spent 30 minutes on, but there's one particular thing where the way we said it, you didn't follow it and you got confusing. That's a perfect example of why you choose the option of the certification that includes Q&A time. If you take that option when you get the certification, then you're going to be able to show up. You made notes. You watched a particular session and you're like, oh, at the 24-minute mark we were talking about this thing, and I need clarification on that. And you ask that when you're in with the live Q&A session. It's exactly what we have those for. We're able to clear it up for you and explain it until you're 100% on board with the topic. So that's the benefit of having one of us for that Q&A session for the certification. So if you look into that, definitely think it'd be worth your while. Any other questions, Nako?
That was it.
All right.
There was one more.
Sorry, go ahead, bro.
Just a really quick one. Is the test for the certification changing after the 31st? And it is going to be updated come next year. But as it is on demand, you could take it now, or you could probably take it at the beginning of next month. It would still be the same test between the two. But shortly after that, it is due to be updated. I don't have an exact date on that yet, though.
Yeah, literally the 3 of us and our boss had a meeting yesterday working on going through that content, revisiting it. We're going to revisit those recordings that we have made. And part of that is going to result in some changed content and some updated test questions to match the changed content. So the content and the ideas are the same. We're just going to be adding some newer, hopefully better content and questions to match.
And for a link for the on-demand content, go ahead and shoot an email over to education@connectwise.com, and we can get out, someone on our team or one of the bros ourselves can get out that information to you to share any links that you need for the on-demand content.
You know, I'm so glad you mentioned that Pacific email address, Nako, because we're going to go ahead and end this. There haven't been any new questions about the content, and literally right after we click, that one attendee is going to be like, oh man, I did have another question about the thing, but I forgot. That's where you can also send that to education@connectwise.com. Hey, I watched the scintillating Awash in a Sea of Variables presentation with McQueenie and Nako, and I had a question about that I didn't get in during the question time. It'll get directed to us, and we'll get you taken care of. Bro, we good?
We are good. And on that note, thank you everybody for attending, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.